Let's talk investing in Africa now, because the Africa Finance Corporation has closed its largest ever debt facility, more than $1 billion, and UAE banks were front and centre, including First Abu Dhabi Bank and Mashreq. Joining us on the line now to give us some perspective from Lagos is Modupe Famakinwa, who's the head of funding at the Africa Finance Corporation. Modupe, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the largest ever debt facility from the Africa Finance Corporation. What is this money for?
So AFC's mission is to facilitate infrastructure development across Africa. These funds are essentially going to go towards that mission. We invest in 5 core sectors: heavy industries, natural resources, and oil and gas, etc. And these will go to developing infrastructure. We've done significant work. AFC owns one of the largest renewable energy farms in the name of Lekela and such like. Our aim is to ensure we bring infrastructure across the continent as quickly as possible, as there's an urgent need. Depending on what data source you look at, the funding gap in the continent is about $1 trillion, and we need about $500 billion annually over the next 10 years to meet this gap. So there's clearly an urgent need. So AFC is hoping to fill this gap. Yeah.
$1 billion signed this week sounds like a lot of money. When you're talking in the trillions, it's a drop in the ocean is perhaps putting it too strongly, but it is just a small piece of the jigsaw. I'm interested in the story that investors are buying into. And your colleague, Samila Zubairu, the president and CEO of the Africa Finance Corporation, talked about the overwhelming interest in Africa's growth story. What is that growth story that banks like Mashreq and Fab have bought into with this debt facility?
When you look at the future and you look at Africa, and you look at several other continents, Africa has one of the youngest populations in the world at the moment. One of the data points we see is that about 3 out of every 5 engineers in the future will be African. There's that strong growth story. When you look at also the natural resources required for the sustainability drive, a lot of those renewable pools sit in Africa as well. AFC as an institution is one of the highest rated institutions on the continent. We come second or third behind Botswana, behind Africa Development Bank. And, that credibility gives investors confidence in our ability to deploy this funding, as we said. We've had a great track record in the past. We've done significant projects such as Lekela that I mentioned, and the likes of Fab and Mashreq have seen that track record. They've co-invested with us on some of these projects, and their vote of confidence by arranging this facility for us is testament to that fact.
What were some of the objections that you had to overcome to get this across the line, to get the lending boards or lending committees at these banks to agree to this? And you've been in there, haven't you? Because you've worked at Standard Chartered Bank before, you've worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC as well. So you've been in the room when these decisions are happening. What kind of objections typically come up, and how do you get over them?
A lot of the conversations are largely a need to understand the continent. A lot of our investors have not necessarily been to the continent, and all they know about us is what they see on the news. One of the things we found, and I especially in my role at AFC, is the need for Africans to tell their story and to tell their story loudly. There's a lot of amazing things happening in the continent, but it's just unknown. A lot of people see the continent as one country, but it's actually 54 countries with vastly different economies. A lot of those economies doing well. So, getting that story across, helping the credit committees understand the nature of the investment, understand that, in fact, there are several risk mitigants, and Africa is not as risky as it indeed is perceived to be. Moody's released a report a few years ago that shows that the actual default on transactions, on loans, especially in project development in Africa, is significantly lower than the rest of the world. So these are the data points that we're able to show the credit committees and help them understand that indeed there is value here. And with a trusted partner like AFC, especially on the back of our investment grade rating, they're in safe hands. And, we're just providing a vehicle to bring institutions like Fab, Mashreq, Abu Dhabi Commercial closer to the continent.
Where does the UAE rank in terms of being a hub for financing what your colleague calls the African growth story? We know China has a significant role to play. We know Europe and the United States will have a significant role to play, and others. Here in the UAE, of course, we think we're the centre of the universe. We think we're all important, but you're more objective. You've got the view from Lagos. Where does the UAE rank?
The UAE, I would say honestly, is coming a close second behind the likes of China. You see partnerships between, for instance, the UAE and Egypt. You see partnerships with, several other significant economies, and the UAE has a clear interest. And one of the things I like about the UAE is the ability to be visionary, to look into the future and see where the growth patterns are. And I think, just by the investments we're seeing with the UAE banks in Africa, they're clearly seeing what we are seeing. There's a strong potential for growth and development. Africa is the future, and the UAE is strongly partnering with us to bring that future closer than it seems to be.
Modupe Famakinwa is head of funding at the Africa Finance Corporation. Just closed the biggest debt facility in its history, over $1 billion. And as she mentioned there, UAE banks playing a significant role in that, the likes of FAB and Mashreq and others. Thanks to Modupe for joining us live on the line from Lagos.